Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rose to national prominence with her long-shot challenge in 2018. Now she's facing a centrist opponent. Former CNBC anchor Michelle Caruso-Cabrera is running against her.
AOC is one of the best fundraisers in all of Congress with $3.5 million in the bank. But with voter turnout expected to be down due to the pandemic, there are concerns that Ocasio-Cortez's revolution is losing its luster. Ryan Grimm joins us now via Skype to talk about that. Ryan, great to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you, Ryan.
So it's not just AOC. I think 3 members of the squad are facing challenges. Just kind of take us through like the seriousness of each one of those.
I think the only one that is serious in the sense where if she lost, it wouldn't be a huge surprise is Rashida Tlaib, who's running in a rematch against Brenda Jones in Detroit. Jones is the city council president there, and they had a very strange primary / general election, special election at the same time in 2018. So you had 2 elections on the same day because the Michigan governor decided that Detroit could do without a member of Congress for about 9 months after John Conyers resigned. No other district, would be treated that way, and so it created this odd situation. And you had 1 extra African American candidate in the special election relative to the primary for the 2018 general election. And because the black vote was divided by that 1 extra piece, I think it was Coleman Young III, who's the grandson, I believe, of the kind of legendary Detroit mayor, he peeled off enough votes that Brenda Jones actually beat Rashida Tlaib in the special election by about 1,000 votes. But then he wasn't on the primary ballot, and so Rashida Tlaib beat Brenda Jones by about 1,000 votes in the primary, then had effectively no competition in the general election. So Jones actually served for about 3 weeks as a member of Congress, and there was this huge controversy back home whether or not she could continue to serve as city council president while also being a member of Congress. And she essentially argued, look, I'm just doing a 3-week stint for fun. Don't make me resign my seat. And she refused to resign her seat. And so she still serves in that position. And I sympathize with that. Who cares?
Right.
It was just 3 weeks to say you're a member of Congress. But and this is the point that the National Journal makes, if she can manage to consolidate and drive out the African American vote in Detroit behind Brenda Jones, particularly the elderly vote, then without the other candidates in the race, then she has a conceivable path to victory. Now, first she has to get the signatures to get on the ballot. She has to get her campaign off the ground in the middle of a pandemic. She tested positive for coronavirus about 6 weeks ago. It seems like she's recovered and doing well, which is great. But obviously that's going to set back the launch of a campaign. On the other hand, I don't think she'll lack for money. There is enough national animosity toward Rashida Tlaib that I'm sure that there will be some type of super PAC that comes in to spend whatever they can to go up on TV against Tlaib. Now, Tlaib is not going to be able to run her ground game in the way that she did in 2018 because of the pandemic, but she is unlike some of the other squad members, a great traditional fundraiser. She did a terrific job in 2018, just hitting the phones, and particularly calling wealthy Muslim Americans around the country and raising a ton of money that way. And as we wrote about at the Intercept, from a lot of Muslims who are more conservative than she is, but she was able to talk to them about her campaign and persuade them to get behind her. And so she won't lack for money either. Another question will be whether or not Bernie Sanders kind of turns on the remnants of his campaign. She was one of the most vocal supporters of his. Her endorsement in September helped turn his campaign around. Is he going to leave her hanging out to dry in that district? The other two, AOC and Ilhan, we'll see.
So that's the interesting thing I wanted to get your take. Josh Kraushaar is somebody I deeply respect in this space. Ryan, he said that he wrote that entire piece about how AOC may be facing this primary challenger and how AOC's campaign refused to share any internal polling with him. I don't think that's nefarious or necessarily shows it's a close race, but it does point to the fact that her district is one of the hardest hit in the country, and that it's possible it could be a political liability that she voted no against that coronavirus package. What's your read generally on the situation? I know you guys have written about the primary opponent in particular.
I mean, we write about long shot races all over the country, including her long shot race in 2018. So I don't necessarily fault him for flagging the possibility that she could win. Like he said, she's running a credible professional campaign. She's raised more than $1 million, and she can easily it's very easy to raise money when you're running against a polarizing figure,
right.
Whether it's Newt Gingrich or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You can just jump on Facebook and start harvesting money. A bunch of Republicans are running for no reason in that district, just because they can raise money on Facebook by saying that they're running against Ocasio-Cortez.
That's right.
Now, name recognition is huge in congressional elections. It cost Joe Crowley big. He served in that district both in the state legislature and Congress for 40 some years, and nobody had heard of him. We in Washington, D.C., Joe Crowley was a name that people recognized, but not back in Queens or the Bronx. And that really hurt him when he was up in 2018. That's not a problem that AOC is going to face. She's going to have near universal name recognition, particularly in that district. She's also, in the last month, gotten a lot of positive press and positive attention in the community for this mutual aid work that she's been doing. And Carusa Cabrera, too. Centrist is generous. She's a kind of Cato libertarian, has been at Cato, and kind of a radical, kind of Randian. So it's an extremely odd fit for the district. So you don't want to take anything for granted, but it'd probably be a mistake for her to invest too many resources in worrying about that relative to the bigger fights that are going on.
Interesting.
How is the Democratic establishment leadership, the organizations affiliated with the Democratic establishment here in this town, how have they approached these primaries? Because it seems like when it's progressives challenging incumbents, it's like, oh my God, you can't take on one of our incumbents. But when it's a centrist challenging a progressive, then, it's all bets are off.
Right. This is not about incumbency. It's about ideology. Hakeem Jeffries, after Joyce Beatty beat Morgan Harper in the Columbus primary, he posted a taunting tweet saying that, okay, one down, now we're going to go defend Yvette Clarke, and he named a couple others that are facing Lacey Clay, that are facing primary challenges from leftist insurgents. He did not say, oh, now we're going to go defend Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is facing a challenge back in New York. No, but nobody would expect it to. There was a Politico report last year that she denied that she was recruiting a challenger to Hakeem Jeffries. So you can't really ask the machine to help you out when you're taking on the machine. But it certainly does expose that this is not about just protecting incumbents, which is an absurd principle to begin with. Donald Trump's an incumbent. I mean, so the idea that you love incumbents regardless of their politics doesn't make any sense to begin with. But it's certainly exposed in this case. Now, if Carusa Cabrera tried to use any consultants that have been they would be blacklisted by the DCCC just because people would pounce on it and call them out for hypocrisy. But there are enough kind of Bloomberg world people that don't do work with the DCCC, and that's who she's using for her campaign. That she can get by without it.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of exposes the interesting thing. The DCCC talks a big game about always backing people who are incumbency and all of that, but it does just demonstrate that if you dare to go against the establishment, that they won't necessarily help you if you find yourself in a fight, will they, Ryan?
Oh no, for sure, and no kind of left-wing member of Congress should be expecting the establishment to bail them out if they ever get in trouble. The one time it did happen was in 2010, not long after he blasted the DCCC in an article that I wrote in the Huffington Post at the time. Raul Grijalva all of a sudden found himself. He was the chair of the CPC. all of a sudden found himself in a nasty fight back home with this 2010 Tea Party wave. And the DCCC, which it never tired of reminding progressives over the next several years, came in and spent money to help Grijalva beat the Republican. But would they have come in and helped him fend off a Democratic challenger? No way.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Ryan, is there anything we can say about, voting patterns during the pandemic, who it benefits, what turnout looks like, who's likely to show up? I mean, do we have enough data to sort of have some lessons at this point?
The presidential primary is going to skew everything because there's been all of this reporting that it's canceled, which can cut both ways. That could mean people who support, who might have only voted to support a Joe Biden, which would be a Caruso Caprera type of voter, would then sit it out. At the same time, now the presidential primary is back on, and ballots. If you download your New York ballot now, you'll see that the presidential candidates are on there, and so that will, presumably galvanize some supporters of Sanders. But there aren't a whole lot of voters out there who are actually, motivated just by getting extra delegates at the convention to fight over rules platforms. Like, trying to find one of those voters in the wild is going to be extraordinarily difficult. Right. So ultimately, I think whatever the pattern is, it just ends up coming down to name recognition and favorability. And on that front, AOC is beating her opponent hands down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Ryan, we know you have some kids to take care of back there.
Sure do.
Appreciate you, Ryan. Thanks for the analysis.
Thank you, Ryan. Great to see you.
Got it. Yep.
Next on Rising, a former ambassador to China likens the president's comments on China to being like Hitler in the 30s. We're going to dive into that when Rising returns.